I thought so too. Yes, how much do they? $170, so it's 10. No, because I got it for. Yeah, I mean, because I don't know what's up cash. Here's a 10. Tell me about it. Yeah, we said yes yesterday. Thank you. You were just here. Hey, sir.
How are you?
You're not good.
For the fire, yes, I printed out for everybody.
Yes. Thank you.
Might as well.
Right, we are live in the meeting already and we're streaming. Audio is on.
Okay.
How are you?
No public participation.
Yes, we have a purchase. I heard you looked up a lot. Oh, you mean like the actual item?
Maybe Dr. B. Maybe Dr. I have not talked to your wife.
Okay, I can get that.
Perkins is like CTE.
There's
I know
only
it's
certain
not,
things
it's just
that
that beautiful
you
face, I know.
It's like a meeting for.
That's so.
I question that every time it's out. But that was- Right, so. for example, items that are-
They're all.
Google picture.
Busy as all get out, but that's all right. I'm standing from.
There's so it's separate from the
Yes, sir.
It's 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, August 24th, 2021. I call this regular meeting of the Kingsville Independent School District to order. This time we'll have roll call vote. Mr. Brian Kufal.
Here.
Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Kreitz.
Here.
Mr. David R. Garcia.
Here.
Ms. Elizabeth Ramos.
Here.
Mr. James Glusing.
Here.
Ms. Delma Salinas.
Here.
And Mr. Corey Garza is present. Also, let the record show that in presence, we have our administrative team here tonight, along with our secretary as well, and Mrs. Andy Galindo, along with our legal counsel, Nick Maddox with the Demeroff, O'Hanlon, and Castillo Group. Again, let the record show there is a quorum of board members present, and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with Government Code Chapter 551, State of Texas Open Meetings Act. This time, we'll move on to the moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
This meeting will be live video streamed at https://bit.ly/3SROLQR. Before we move on to item number 4, the adoption of the agenda, I'm going to ask if there's any objection before we begin, if we could go ahead and put number E would be consider approval of requested proposal for district-wide roofing to be considered D, and bring down consider approval of purchase over 2,500 when adopting the SO agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Been moved by Lieutenant Colonel Kreitz. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
By Ms. Elizabeth Ramos. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. This time we'll move on to item number 5, public participation. At this time, Ms. Pettis, do you have anybody that wishes to address the board? We don't. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 6. This will be communication from administration. Again, 6A, superintendent's update. It'd be the 2021-2022 safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. This can be found on page 4 of your board book. It'd be Dr. Pitts.
Good evening, Board President, Mr. Garza, members of the board. I will be presenting this instead of Dr. Sandoval, who's not able to attend tonight. The Safe Return in-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services Plan, Dr. Pettis has already shared it with you. The only difference is that it has been updated to include the latest board actions. I will take any questions you might have.
I haven't had time to look over the revised, so I don't know exactly. Is it more than just a mask that's been changed or no?
No, that's all that's been changed.
And does it say anything about close contact reporting?
Just a moment.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance. Because all I'm reading is what happens when a child tests positive, not when a child has been around or is related to someone who is tested positive, whether they live at that home or not, or we're around them for 15 minutes without a mask on.
The guidance we've been given to close contact has been if they live in the household, the same procedures apply. If they are vaccinated, 7 days of quarantine. If they are not vaccinated, 10 days of quarantine.
That's on the district banner, but I don't find it anywhere else written.
You define
Close contact, I mean, not tested positive.
Yeah. Big day, Jim.
Thanks.
Correct. Okay, thank you. That's fine.
Dr. Pitts, could you define the definition of vaccinated? I got my second shot yesterday. Am I vaccinated?
Well, according to CDC, it has to be 2 weeks after your second dose.
What's our definition for our purposes?
We rely on CDC guidance.
So I can't declare vaccinated until 2 weeks after I get the second shot.
Correct, unless it's a single dose vaccine.
Okay, so what's my status the day after I get vaccinated, the second time?
Unvaccinated.
Unvaccinated, so it's black or white.
Correct.
So let me go ahead and step in real quick. These are all great questions, and I know that moving forward, we, as a board collectively, said that we would put COVID agenda items on there. And something that I want this board to continue to look at in the near future is to consult, and I've already spoken with Dr. Pettis and with Mr. Maddox about this, and we'll be talking to him about it, is maybe bringing on a medical personnel to kind of clarify everything. And I think because unfortunately, I understand that, you know, we do put a lot on staff, and the CDC is changing daily along with the FDA. Some unfortunately providers, again, have different outlooks, but I think that moving forward, this board should consider maybe bringing somebody on full-time, well, on a part-time basis as a medical consultant. So if there's any questions that arise from this board, from the faculty, from students, from parents, that again, that this medical personnel can again get with them, get with Dr. Pettis and legal to make sure that everything that is being, you know, that is actually the questions being answered are given, that the right information is given back to them. Because I think that if we get into, well, what's this, what's that, unfortunately, and I'm not, our staff is not the experts. And I don't mean that in a bad way. When it comes to education, you're doing right, we are. But again, I would like to see this board in the near future consider maybe a medical, like I said, director, whether it be a physician's assistant, whether it be a nurse practitioner, a DO, an MD, to work closely again, like I said, with our COVID coordinator, Ms. Lou Wilson, which her team doing an excellent job. But I'd like to see that moving forward, and maybe in our next meeting, we can entertain maybe a motion or something like that, but I just wanted to put it out there.
Any other questions?
Dr. Pitts,
Yes, sir.
can you explain to me what a lab confirmed result is? Is that the same as a test you can go get at CVS or
No.
A lab confirmed is one that is actually performed through the doctor's office and taken to the lab.
So the one from, so a test from CVS, Walgreens, or whatever, would not really constitute a confirmed positive or negative.
Correct, but if somebody definitely does test positive with that type of test, we definitely recommend that they get a lab confirmed test.
That's what the PCR test was.
The nasal swab.
So PCR tested less than that.
Okay,
Is it? That's what I'm asking.
And again, I understand where we're going to the board, but I think that at the end of the day, this is, I think something was presented to us today. And again, it's a working document. And that's why I feel it's important that those questions, and again, they're all important, that again, I think that a medical team, if we do go that route, can have all the answers that we're asking, all the questions we're asking, that person will have the answer, and we can eliminate a lot of this stuff. Because we can sit here at the board and ask this and ask that, and we hear out in the community, but again, we're not the experts. And unfortunately, like I said, the CDC and the FDA changes daily. And I would hate, and I'm only one, to put the burden back on our staff when we have plenty of personnel out there when it comes to the medical field that are willing to step up and help this district out. The last thing that we want is to put ourselves out there and not know what we're saying. And again, I'm not saying that we don't, but again, these are things that a lot of this stuff that comes from the safe return to person instruction, the continuity of the services plan has come forth through TA, am I correct to say that, Dr. Fitz?
a lot of it has, and then we try to take our guidance from CDC's latest updates.
Okay, so nothing on here says that it's mask or mandatory, that they must be in use. It just says, comment by maintaining health and safety on page 6. And infection control measures, the number 1 says use of mask and face shield. Is that a suggestion or?
You're on page 6.
Correct.
Where are you, Ms. Rose?
Maintaining health and safety and infection control measures, the first bullets are use of face mask and face shield. Is that a suggestion?
It might be, and again, I don't know, we have legal here, but a motion was made and seconded, and it became part of the policy procedure that we do. Am I correct to say that, Mr. Maddox?
Yes, Mr. President, Board of Trustees, it's the understanding of the administration that on Friday, the board directed the administration to come up with regulations with mandatory mask use. If you have any questions specifically regarding interpreting that, I'm happy to answer those in executive session as guidance.
I think the only thing I'm asking is it sounds like all these are suggestions. They're not anything that's mandatory. I mean, it's this proper hand washing is quote encouraged. So if I vote on this tonight, are we mandating that people wear masks? Are we mandating that you must wash your hands? Like you have no choice. That's all I want to know.
This is not
This is
a,
not an action item, this is just a plan that we have because
Okay, right.
it's required.
and this is a work in progress. This is something, all these questions are good and things that we can make sure we define more clearly in our plan moving forward.
All right, because that just sounds like a suggestion, not anything mandatory.
What was the thing we did Friday?
Action item.
That was an action,
Yes, sir.
and the action was to.
I don't have the motion in front of me to read it on, and I don't want to say something that I don't see, because I can say something that's wrong, and it'll get twisted.
I thought we did that Friday, we implemented mask policy.
Correct, but we didn't implement the forcing of people to wash their hands either, so.
Okay, so again,
I'm just
I'm gonna go ahead and
saying,
stop the
it sounds like a
discussion.
suggestion in here.
Okay, again, we have been advised, and again, I do understand everybody has questions. And that's why Mr. Max has already said that when we get to the executive session portion, we would definitely nosedive into it to get a lot of clarity. But again, just like Trustee Kupal said, and Dr. Pitts, again, I know each of us have a lot of questions, but again, this is just something that actually the board asked, if I'm not mistaken, wanted to know what type of procedures were happening, what was going on. And I think this is exactly what staff is doing, is kind of giving us a rundown of what they're suggesting, what they're gonna do. But again, this is a working document that can happen. And that's why I say in the near future, I mean, in the very, very near future, here pretty soon, we should maybe consider bringing a medical expert to come oversee when it comes to the COVID procedures, policies, when we have those great questions that the board has. Thank you, Dr. Pitts.
You're welcome.
Dr. Pitt, I do have a question. On this handbook,
Yes,
or this, plan that y'all put together,
yes.
do y'all have the appendices? Or not in the handbook?
Are you talking about
It says-
the safe return of school plan?
Yes, the procedures and the maps for the different schools. It says appendix A, B, C, D, and E. So I was looking at the handbook and they're not attached, so I don't know.
Let me look into that.
Any other questions for Dr. Pitts? Okay, thank you, Dr. Pitts, for stepping in for Dr. Sandoval. This time we'll move on to communication again from administration. This is part of 6A, number 2, remote conferencing plan. Look at the logo of that one. Plan, page 13, we found your board book. Ms. Angela Ramirez.
Thank you. And to answer Ms. Lena's question regarding the maps, this is online, and so it's a safety measure to not put our maps online. However, we can give you those appendices so that you have them for your use.
It's just that I saw it on the table.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't think, so they're not attached.
Okay, good evening. I will be presenting remote conferencing. You have a copy of the handbook, if you will. I will be presenting the PowerPoint only to you as an overview for the handbook. So on August 5th, 2021, the Texas Education Agency announced changes to the student attendance accounting handbook to add remote conferencing. Remote conferencing is a method of instruction by which remote instruction can be provided to students as a result of COVID-19 with certain parameters around that. Remote conferencing must meet 2 requirements. Number 1, the student is unable to attend school as a result of COVID-19. And number 2, the total amount of remote conferencing instruction does not exceed more than 20 instructional days for the entirety of the school year. So this is not remote learning as we know it in the past. There is a cap to this for a communicable disease of COVID. Must follow those 2 requirements, and in addition, one of the following requirements must be met. The student's temporary medical condition is documented by a physician licensed to practice in the United States. And the documentation must include a statement from the physician that the student is to remain confined to their home or a hospital. Or the student has a positive test result for COVID-19. Or the student has been identified as having been in close contact with an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19 who is living within the same household. Additionally, items to note are if the documented temporary medical condition persists longer than 20 instructional days over the entirety of the year, a TEA waiver must be submitted for an extension of remote conferencing for each individual student where this applies beyond the allowable cumulative 20 instructional day period. Students participating through remote conferencing will be considered present if they receive 2 to 4 hours of instruction, synchronous instruction each school day, depending on the grade level. If you're in pre-K through 5, it's 4 hours of remote conferencing. 2 of those hours must be synchronous, face-to-face with an instructor, and 2 of those can be independent learning or asynchronous. For grades 6 through 12, it must be 4 hours of synchronous learning, face-to-face learning with the student. Remote conferencing cannot be concurrent with other instruction. Meaning last year, our teachers were asked, well, a lot of teachers were asked, not just in our district, to perform both face-to-face and remote instruction. This year, we cannot do that. So teachers who are teaching face-to-face may not do remote at the same time. We have to find alternative methods for that.
Question.
Yes, sir.
If you were to have 5 kindergarten children that for some reason could not attend school and qualify for remote conferencing, can a single teacher interact with all 5 of those students at one time, or does it have to be one-to-one?
No, a teacher can interact with all 5 students at one time. Most districts are doing a district hub, if you will. So there may be 1 to 2 teachers for, depending on the size of the district, larger districts may have 1 to 2 teachers for kinder, 1 to 2 teachers for first grade, or 1 teacher, or 3, 4. So for the whole district, not just for each individual campus. Also, keeping in mind that parents, once we discover this through our nurses, the principal or a designee, and I might be getting ahead of my presentation, but I'll say it right now because it aligns to your question of what I want to address right now, will contact the parent for permission to participate in remote conferencing. Some parents will give permission, some parents will not give permission. Some students will be too sick to participate in remote conferencing. So it's important to note that any student who does not participate in remote conferencing will have the amount of days absent to make up the work per district policy. So procedures for initiating remote conferencing instruction. Students will not receive a schedule change. They will keep their original classroom teacher or their teacher of record. We want to make sure that just for the short temporary period of time that they're out, they're going to go back to their same schedule. Principal designee will contact parent upon being notified for remote conferencing, and they have a script, and you can see the script in your handbook. If parent agrees to remote conferencing expectations, the principal designee will complete a remote conferencing form. This form has the information needed for the remote conferencing teacher to be able to contact teacher of record, parents, first day of remote conferencing, and so forth. That is also in the handbook. The principal designee will ask the student to track the students on a form. We have a student tracker form so that we know which students are participating in remote conferencing, which are not, and how many days they participated so that we can keep up with that 20-day requirement. When a student is quarantined, the student's teachers will be notified according to the plan outlined below. I don't know why I'm trying to read so far when I have it right in front of me. Continuing, the COVID-19 student tracker will be shared with the remote conferencing teacher. This will allow the remote conferencing teachers to keep track of the number of days the student is quarantined, as I just mentioned. Students will be required to log in and meet with the remote conferencing teachers daily during their designated conferencing times as outlined in the remote conferencing schedule sent to students and parents by the remote conferencing teacher. So once the remote conferencing teacher receives this remote conferencing form, that'll kickstart for the teacher, for that remote conferencing teacher to contact the parent, welcome them to the remote conferencing classroom, let them know the first day of instruction, the schedule, and so forth. In order to ensure that all remote conferencing students complete assignments and remain on pace with their classes, the remote conferencing teachers will have access to the classroom teacher of records, Google Classroom assignments and lessons. So the students will still be provided instruction with whatever they would be missing if they were in their classroom.
I have a question about that.
since we're aligning all of our curriculum with all the campuses instead of them doing things differently or however they've always wanted to do them, when they get this so-called conferencing, if they're, let's say, second grade is learning about the life cycle of a ladybug, then everybody that week will be learning the life cycle. So there will be confusion on what we're supposed to be learning. And then the second, I kind of had a second question with that. If I'm reading it, it says this allows students to remain successful in their classes and minimizes the loss of instruction time. And I'm not getting any instruction when it comes to the description of this. It's mainly what I'm hearing is a conference. Can you explain exactly what this conference does?
The remote conferencing is the synchronous instruction.
So they're getting taught as if a teacher was actually teaching in the classroom. So there's not just sit around and ask questions and we'll give you the answers to them and here's your work, get it done.
Correct. Now, having said that, and to your first point, yes, and that's what's so great about this, because now we're all on the same page. So having said that, we're just kicking this off. And so we are asking when we call to please bear with us, because we are figuring this out. We are literally, again, building the plane as we're flying it. And so there are going to be opportunities and moments for tweaking. I think what's going to be key is communication between the leaders on the campus, the remote conferencing teachers, the parents, and so forth.
Can I chime in real quick?
Mhm.
Talking about this remote conferencing, and again, maybe some of y'all don't want to hear it, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyway. There's a neighboring district down the road that has been in school for a while, so I guess you can figure it out. Honestly, they started back in August. And I know it was a friend of mine, unfortunately, was as going through this, that they had unfortunately some positives, which unfortunately happens. And it took them 6 days in order for the district to get everything in order. So you are correct. It is a process. It's something you said was important. It's a great question, Mr. Ramos, is that everything is trying to stay aligned, but that student finally got in today after 6 days of waiting. So I urge, and please understand, this is not gonna happen overnight. I know there's people who are gonna call us and other people are gonna call downtown. But again, this is something the state has rolled out. It's not a Kingsville ISD deal, but we have to be patient. We have to be patient. And again, I understand there'll be no child left behind, but what I can tell you is a neighboring district, it took 6 days for that child to get in and was literally waiting by the computer, trying to log on, didn't have a login information and was waiting approval. But again, the school was in contact, like you said, with the parent, and they were constantly communicating daily and telling them it's okay, it's okay. And then I think if today if they weren't going to get something, they were going to go to some type of worksheets to try to make sure. But again, I just want to make sure that people understand that this is not going to happen. Again, we pray and hope that, this whole COVID thing, that it slows down, and there's going to be, like I said, positive cases. There's going to be people that are going to be, have to be held home, but it's not going to be there tomorrow and say, okay, we're ready to go. It's going to be a process. So please bear with us. I know that everybody's in this together, but again, just bear with the district and with everyone when it comes to this.
Thank you.
When do the 20 days start?
The 20 days start upon the student's first remote conferencing day. Okay. And the reason I say that is because of what Mr. Garza just said. As we're tweaking, for example, the example he gave was 6 days. So if they miss 6 days of instruction, what we would ask is that child have 6 days to make up that work that they missed for the 6 days, because we weren't able to provide instruction on that. So if that ends up occurring with our district, and we will have a lot of tweaking to do initially.
So would those be unexcused absences if it wasn't rolled out, a timely enough?
No, they would be excused absences because we have reason. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I'm not mistaken, right, as long as they are in communication with staff, there shouldn't be any issue, but if there is, I know we'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important to communicate, like you said.
When's this first day?
Tomorrow.
Did we identify the teachers?
Yes, sir.
Good.
For elementary and middle school, right now, we have one teacher representative. And for high school, we have some inquiries in with a potential at this point.
You have one teacher for elementary covering K through 5?
No, sir, we have one teacher for pre-K through first, one teacher for second, third, one teacher for fourth, fifth, and right now we do have one teacher for sixth, eighth.
Okay,
They are our instructional teacher coaches, and the reason we selected them initially is because they know our curriculum, they know Google Classroom, so they will be doing this for a minimum of 3 weeks. And then when we get certified subs in, what have you, they will be the trainers of trainers, but these are the perfect teachers to kick this off because they're going to be able to really help us tweak this process.
and are we looking at one session per, like K through, you said K through 2? Okay, so,
Pre-K through first grade.
okay, so pre-K through first grade. Will that teacher be teaching 3 classes, a pre-K, a kinder, and a first, or are they all going to kind of be lumped together?
We discussed that, and so we're going to be playing around with that with our ITCs, and they're going to be giving us feedback as to what's working and what's not working. Initially, we believe that in pre-K through first, and the reason we broke up the grade levels the way we did was because we know there's a COVID learning gap. And so we know our kinder and first graders are going to be learning, could be potentially learning letters and sounds and blending just like pre-K. So,
What time
again,
of day?
in the morning.
We look in the morning. So if you're not there in the morning, you're not doing it, basically.
Well,
I mean, just making sure I understand.
yes, if you look at the script, there are certain criteria that our parents have to agree with so that we're able to do this. I believe the script is the second to the last page or the last page in the actual handbook.
And how many do we have looking at right now, starting tomorrow?
Right now, starting tomorrow, as of right now, and we can ask the principals, I believe we have maybe 7 middle school students or
It will be 8 as of
8 middle school students as of tomorrow. And with our elementaries, not a lot have agreed. I know some scenarios where students were being tested either today or tomorrow. And so parents are saying, I'm going to hold off on agreeing to remote conferencing until I find out those results. And then I'll let you know.
So it's not really one-on-one.
No,
It could be 1 on 8.
yes, sir.
Okay, but it's eyeball to eyeball, one on with all 8.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So moving along for procedures for initiating remote conferencing instruction, special education 504 and bilingual. Services will be provided to students and we will accommodate lessons and assignments accordingly. Classroom teachers of record will provide remote conferencing teachers accommodated assignments and lesson supports as needed. Remote conferencing teachers will be given their assigned students IEPs and or accommodations to ensure compliance in providing services. Procedures for initiating remote conferencing instruction. Continued, remote conferencing teacher will guide instruction for their assigned students and provide graded assignments to the classroom teacher on a weekly basis. And the remote conferencing teachers will document daily attendance utilizing specific codes for remote conferencing attendance because that code does have to be different. That's how we initiated the process. The next slide shows what each person's role and responsibility is during the actual implementation of remote conferencing. So you can see the remote conferencing teacher, or maybe not because it's a little small, but the remote conferencing teacher actively engages students in Zoom sessions, takes attendance daily, monitor and document student progress daily, maintain routine communication with classroom teacher and parents, request assistance as needed, and collects grades and turns in completed assignments weekly. The principal or the designee assures campus and individual student tracker forms are routinely updated and supervises remote conferencing instruction. Curriculum and instruction, my department will respond to principal campus needs, remote conferencing teachers and parent requests, and provide assistance and support curriculum implementation. I have been a part of, actually, this is my responsibility. I've been a part of every piece of training principals, the ITCs, the development. So we will continue to support as needed. The classroom teacher or the teacher of record will communicate with the remote conferencing teacher weekly, input remote conferencing student grades and gradebook, communicate with parents, and support RC teacher. Our special education 504 ESL programs and or teachers will monitor student progress on a weekly basis and offer assistance as needed. Our nurse will maintain routine contact with parents, inform principal of any changes in updates. And then we are asking that the student attend and actively participate in synchronous Zoom sessions with the video on, and with the visual of the face every day, access Google Classroom and complete all assignments. And then secondary may participate in completing elective assignments, but they will not be required to do so. They can have that time to make up upon their return. We are focusing on the core content areas for the short amount of time that the students will be away from the classroom. Questions?
Well, when you say that they're going to have time to make up this work, how much time are we going to give them?
For the student attendance and accounting handbook, it's 1 day per absence.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Do you perceive the need to expand this down the road?
It's going, the first 6 weeks to 9 weeks, I think, is going to tell us a lot on whether we need to expand, definitely what we need to tweak and improve. So we'll be monitoring it closely.
If you do expand it, would it be expanded to maybe afternoon hours or evening hours?
Yes, sir. We will take that into consideration.
Ms. Ramirez, you mentioned that after 20 days, there's an option to fill out or ask for a waiver. Is that correct? How many days is that added to our 20 days?
We don't know right now. TA is looking at every waiver because it has to be completed on each individual student as an individual case.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Ms. Ramirez? And thank you, Susan. Good luck
Thank
to
you.
you and your staff. Okay, we're going to move on to, again, communication from administration, city ordinance for fire inspections with fees. That can be found on page 33. Dr. Peter Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. We were asked after last board meeting to bring this item back for a detailed breakdown of how much we had to pay for the inspections and the for the sprinkler system and the fire alarms and also the occupancy. In front of you, you have that breakdown. It comes out to $2,850 per year. The expense on last board meeting's check register was for $5,700. That was for 2 years because they did not provide us an invoice for quite a while. I believe they had some turnover in that position. So the $5,700 was for 2 years, and you see the breakdown and all the expenses. I did ask for a discount. I asked for a waiver of all fees. I was told no. I was told that it was a city ordinance passed by the city and they had no control. I will take any questions you have.
Well, we thank you for that.
As a businessman, my insurance company requires that I hire an independent guy to come in and do this. And then the city comes in, I have to pay my independent guy, and then the city comes in and does the same thing. Is our insurance company requiring that we do this also? And are we having to have a second independent test done? And is there a possibility that we can allow the cities to stand as our insurance?
That's a great question. I can look into it. I know that we have another. Let me look into it and get back to you before
Because I had to pay twice, and it irks me, but, and I don't know if we have to do that also.
Other questions?
Is there something in particular going on? Okay, so the 1 year price is $2,850, sounds a whole lot better than $5,700. So I guess that explains some of those fees. But in our check registry, we're not at yet. We've got 2 charges I've seen for fire alarm inspections and then another sprinkler backflow inspection. With the 2 years of charges and that, it's over 15 grand. Is there something going on or do we have to renew our fire receipt?
No, these are annual that we have to pay.
Annual thing. The CTE building that's, back there, are we paying for any of that? Back there?
Paying for what, the inspections for those buildings? Yes. Yes.
How are they working out?
Well, whenever we get inspected, we get a list of repairs that need to be done, and we have already completed those repairs.
On the building that we did the walkthrough on?
Well, that one, no,
Okay.
but that one we're not planning to use currently until we make a decision what we're gonna do with
Do
it.
you have to pay those fees when they're not in use?
You still got that.
So we're paying for a building that we're not using, but then we're paying for the fire for a building we're not using.
They didn't,
We're gonna address that. Should we be addressing that issue?
Are you talking about the building that? Yes, and a lot of that will be done here. When we talk about we'll talk about the back because it's gonna be a legal thing. You're correct. No, I'm moving on to. Any other, for Dr. Pitts, when it comes to the city ordinance for the fire inspection fees that he provided for us? All right, thank you, Dr. Pitts. We're going to move on to 6B, budget recap report, check registry for July 2021. Dr. Peter Pitts.
I'll address a couple of the big ticket items and then answer any questions. So our biggest 2 are always our electric bill and also our health insurance. And then our water comes in as well. Varsity Spirit Passions, that's not usually at the top of our list. Cheerleaders bought uniforms, and again, that comes out of the student activity account. And then there were some purchases also for athletics from Varsity Spirit Passions as well. A lot of training from Region 2. Daniel Terrazas is one of our professional service contractors for special education that provides services for those students. I'll take any questions you have on anything else.
I want you to hold what you said about, again, Mr. Terraza. I know we've done a lot of business, but remind me when it comes to the $25,000, when we do that, because I have a question when it comes to a program that he sells. So I just want to make sure that, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So just, you know what I'm talking about, correct? I'm solid as well?
No, I do, but I think we're gonna, it's the same thing.
Correct.
We'll go with yours. Yeah.
I'll get there when I get to 25,000.
Okay. I got a couple of questions. Omni Hotel, $5,400. You know how many people that was?
I can get you that answer.
Okay. First page, about 2/3 of the way down. The CTA, it says General and Perkins. And which? General fund or Perkins money?
Where are you?
About 2/3 down on the first page.
On the first page.
Right under Varsity Brands Holding Company.
Got it. Okay. You're talking about, okay, Omni Hotel. Yes, part of it was paid out of the general fund, part of it was paid out of the Perkins fund.
We don't know what it was, other than.
I can get that
Here's what it
information to you.
was. Second page, College Board, 2814. It's the testing materials. Testing materials for what? What test?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yes, I do.
AP?
You'd have to, is it okay if we address Mr. Malater?
Yes.
It's for College Board for the AP exams from last year.
Okay. We got the results from those, right?
Yes, I can get those to you.
I already asked a question on a board member request, so it's already covered. This is just a thing, what description, where you say contracted services or consultant services. Is it possible to say, what the service was?
Yes, I can
I
make
mean,
that
just,
adjustment.
curiosity.
Okay.
On the fourth page, starts with Ed Web AC Lawn and Garden. I'm gonna, so I don't name the name. Go to the bottom of that page.
Okay.
And count up 9 positions.
Okay.
That guy
Okay.
still work for us?
Yes,
He does?
yes.
Because I couldn't find him on Mr. Jake, what's your last name? Pettis. I couldn't find that on any of the forms that he was putting out. That person's still employed by
That
us
is correct.
at H&K.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see either one. So, okay, maybe you can show it to me later.
Yes, sir.
That's it, thank you. Oh, one more question. Not related to the check register, but kind of related to the check register. When we have a bill as a district to pay, is the check register the only means that we use to pay debts or bills?
Well, we get an invoice from the vendor and we have a purchase order that's put in place ahead of time.
But is that the only means from which, are you going for credit card or?
We're going for a credit card, so let's call
Well, a
it.
credit card
Credit
or a
card.
wire transfer or anything like that?
Are those posted in the check register?
The wire transfers are not posted in the check register. Any credit card purchase, which are rare, are posted in the check register.
Okay.
The wire transfers are generally something we get money from TEA, which is required, or we pay out for our bonds. We have to pay principal and interest every 6 months for those. So they're things that are required.
Okay. How hard would it be for maybe the board to see wire transfers for the last year?
Not hard at all.
Yeah, that to
Is that all
you.
right, Ms. Loomis? Oh, is that all right? Did we get that?
She's like, what do you?
Well, I'd like to see, because I don't know. I've never seen a wire transfer.
No, and again, I don't think that would be a problem. Again, I think Dr. Fritz has already said that he agreed to provide that information. So go forth if you don't
For the
mind.
last year?
Okay. So basically this fiscal year.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
about
this year
to
that
end.
we're getting ready to close out, that'd be good. Just to get a order of magnitude of what goes out.
Do you want just outgoing or incoming as well?
I'm more concerned about money going out, not money coming in.
Do y'all send money back and forth between tax pool?
No, the only wire transfers are like bonds.
Only ones are bonds?
Yes, sir.
I thought you said we do it for like.
Well, revenue that we're getting, we get from the state,
Income.
incoming revenue.
Okay,
Which
so
are-
you don't send money back for any reason?
We send money for our bond payments.
That's it.
Yes, sir.
Those are the only wire transfers we do.
Yes.
Okay, well,
Any other questions? I've got another question. It was just reminded to me by a photograph. Do we have a mascot uniforms clean?
Mascot uniforms.
And what do they charge us for that? Professionally clean at the end of the year? Do we have? Well, being now that we have an issue with COVID, I would suggest that we need to have the mascot uniforms clean. At the end of the year, yes. During the year, no. Okay.
Because you only have one person with that, with that outfit, uniform, whatever you call it.
Used to have two, now we have one.
Okay.
So at the end of the year, it is take care of it. All right, that's all I want to take care of. But it just hit me.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Dr. Fitz. You're welcome. Go ahead and move on to item number 7, new business. Under 7A, by common consent, the board agrees to consider as one action item the following. This can be found on pages 47 to 138 in your board book. Again, first, approval of monthly financial report for July 2021, approval of monthly investment report for July 2021, approval of tax report for July 2021, approval of waiver of tuition for transfer students for 2021-2022 school year. And number 5, approval of 2021-2022 T-test appraises. There a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Brian Kufal, is there a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Thelma Salinas, any other discussion? Not proceed to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. All right, item 7B, consider approval of 2021-2022 proposed budget. Can be found on page 139 on your board book. Again, that'd be Dr. Pitts.
We have talked about this budget in length through the budget workshop, so I will not present in detail tonight. I will answer questions. We are proposing a $28.7 million general fund budget, and we are expecting the same amount in revenues. So we are expecting a break even for general fund. We're expecting in food service, we're expecting $863,000 surplus, and in our debt fund, a $40,000 negative balance, which we are going to take to the INS fund balance. So it will reduce our fund balance for INS by $40,383. You see the revenues up there, and you see the tax rate as well. We will be voting on the tax rate as a separate item. I will answer any questions.
On your total local revenues, what is the number that drives the number? Obviously, it's 80.
Okay, so there's a couple. So let's look at the 5,700 total local revenue. That is driven by our tax collections. The state revenue is driven by a couple of things. It's driven by our ADA. It's driven by the difference between property values between the state and the county. And it's also driven by our sub-pops as well. We get more funding per student depending on whether they're in special education or CT and so on.
Generally speaking,
Yes.
when you're calculating what your budget numbers are, I think you said you use 1,600.
2,600 for ADA.
2,600 for ADA. That means 2,600 butts in the seat.
On average, every day.
Every day. That's not our enrollment or our.
Correct, right.
Our enrollment is somewhat higher than that.
Yes, we're expecting our enrollment to be closer to 3,000.
Okay. But 2,600 is the magic number as far as making your number good here on the 18th of.
Correct. If we are falling behind that, and we will bring that routinely to the board, we will have to figure out a game plan. And right now, luckily, we do have the ESSER funds, and part of it is to help you hold harmless for any decreases in ADA. Yes, today we did have an increase in the number of students that we had. We had 2,319 students today.
How far down the road do you go before you push the panic button?
2 weeks.
I think further than that.
You think we can go back to what you talked about yesterday, it's the 60 days?
Because there's a lot of factors that come into play here, and if you look at our policies in other districts' policies, there's a lot of should this happen, this will happen. Should vaccines become routinely available for children under the age of 12, then this remote instruction stuff goes away from the TEA in terms of us being able to get money for it. If it doesn't become remotely available, the income side, forget that. I mean, we can't have our instructional people doing remote learning for past 3 weeks. We're going to be looking at additional staff. We don't have another choice if we've got somebody that has to devote to that. So I think we've got a while. We've got continuing variables that are going to be impacting us. Again, every budget is a shot in the dark, but this one is probably more a shot in the dark than we've ever had before.
So you said ESSER 2, ESSER 3?
ESSER 2.
Did we spend all the ESSER 3?
All the ESER 3 has already been allocated. We will be bringing the ESER 2 on September the 13th.
Okay. Taking your scenario where, you know, all hell breaks loose, and when we look at maybe going at current budget and you know, shaving 5% or 10% off of programs where you can do that, maybe.
We'll have to put all options on the table. We'll have to look at what we can cut from the general fund and what we can move to some of the ESER. I did look at, there was a question from the board, what if we offered remote instruction to all students? And let's say half of them took us up on it. We had about half remote and half in person last year. It'd be about $8.3 million deficit that we'd be looking at if we did half our kids remote. As of right now, we're not getting any funding from the state for that.
Do we, and this may be premature to ask, but as of right now, do we know of what I perceive to be a, you know, deficit of what we thought we'd have to what we do have? Has anybody come up and said, hey, the reason why my kid's not in school is because I'm not sending them? And do we have rough ideas what those numbers are?
You mean the ones that are just choosing not to?
Choosing not to send because their kids aren't vaccinated.
I don't have an answer on that. I mean, I'm very encouraged about us.
I don't think we have an answer, but are we trying to get an answer so that we know what the order of magnitude of the problem is?
Yes, I'm very encouraged about the increase of 158 kids from the first day to the second day. I think that a lot of the parents are realizing that all the safety protocols that we're putting in place are effective. And I think maybe on the first day there was a little hesitancy, but it seems like, again, we're getting a lot of our students. If we have 2,319, we know that we have more students than that because those are only the ones that came to school today. So we know that our enrollment has to be higher, possibly 2,700. Time will tell after the first 2 weeks. We'll know where we are with enrollment and we'll know where we are with those that are actually attending.
I just think that number is a canary in the coal mine for us. It tells us kind of an issue we have. Is it a big issue? Is it a little issue? Is it something we need to maybe consider doing?
So just for comparison from last year, we did remote instruction as well as in person last year. So the first 6 weeks, we were at about 2,450 students that attended both in person and online. The second and third 6 weeks, about 2,500 and 2,550. The fourth, fifth 6 weeks were about 2,600, 2,625, and 2,650. So there was a steady increase throughout the year, but the first 6 weeks last year, again, we were sitting at about 2,450, and yesterday we had 2,319 in person, whereas the 2,450 was remote and in person together. So that is encouraging.
So, and there was no condition on remote learning last year.
Last year we got funding for remote learning.
Yeah,
So.
there's no condition on it, so I don't know how relative you can compare one year to the next. This year, it's show up.
Well, we know that total in the first 6 weeks last year, we had 2,450 for the first 6 weeks. That showed up either in person or at home. So if we beat that 2,450, that's a good sign because that includes everybody that decided to do both last year.
All right, to be the optimist, I'll be the pessimist.
So if 100 students decided to go to online, what does that cost the district?
Well, if we are just talking lots of ADA, we're talking close to $800,000. If we're talking also having to hire additional teachers, we're talking another $200,000. So
But no, if we're 100 students that we don't have, that we should have, that left for online schooling, what's that drop in the bucket for what we would lose if they actually came to school?
Oh, if they actually came to school?
Yeah, we're enrolled here and went to school here.
It'd be about $800,000
For 100 students.
for 100 students.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Pitts? Again, we had a budget workshop yesterday that was open to the public. And this time, administration is recommending the Board of Trustees approve the 2021-2022 proposed budget as presented by Dr. Peter Pitts. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Made by Mr. Brian Kufal. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Delma Salinas.
Good question.
Absolutely, we can have a discussion. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
143. And. Your head.
Yeah.
We're just on the budget.
We're just on the budget. We're getting that tax rate on the budget.
Okay, no.
You have a question? You good? Oh, wait. Okay. So again, there's been a motion again in front of the board on the second to approve the proposed budget for the upcoming 2021-2022 school year. Again, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. All right. Item 7C, consider approval of proposed 2021 tax rate and resolution. This can be found on page 114 of your board book. Dr. Peter Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Yes, sir.
We have talked in length about the tax rate as well. We are proposing to keep the tax rate the same at 1.5189. The state has compressed our M&O tax rate to 1.0265. That is the highest tax rate we can have for M&O without going out for a tax ratification election. The INS tax rate, you do not need to go out for a tax ratification election. For the INS tax rate, you don't need to go out for an INS tax ratification election to increase it. You are required to set the tax rate to pay all your bond debt. We have, over the last couple of years, as the state has decreased our M&O tax rate, we have wisely decided to move the pennies back over. A long time ago, we moved the pennies from the INS side to the M&O side because the state was going to give us a lot more money. The problem was that then they stopped funding as much of the debt that we have. They used to give us about $2 million a year. Now they're giving us under $100,000 a year to pay that debt. They are expecting us to, as the M&O tax rate decreases, to be able to take it on the INS side and use it to pay for our bonds. So we are recommending an exact tax rate, the same as it has been for the last dozen years or so. Two things in approval is one, we would have to read the motion as indicated in red, and two, we would also have to read the resolution out loud too. I will take any questions that you have.
Overall, the tax rate doesn't change for the citizens.
The tax rate does not change, but as their property values increase, they are paying more tax with the same tax rate.
Yeah, but we're not setting that. That's correct.
No, that is the county appraisal district.
15189 is the same as last year's, and the year before that, the year before that, 12 years.
Yes, that's true.
This is just playing with how those numbers get added up. Joe Q Public isn't paying any more of a tax rate.
That is
than
correct.
he has in the last 12 years.
That's correct. It's just the way that once we collect the taxes, how much of it goes to paying our debt and how much of it goes to paying our maintenance and operations costs.
But if he has a problem with how much taxes he's paying, his problem's with the assessor, not with us.
That is correct.
We'll keep it our way.
He won't see it that way.
That's right.
Well, and I might add that people pay taxes also for the county, they pay them for the city, and they've got the same issue that when their property values go up, the tax rate, the total tax that they pay goes up.
And you heard again the presentation again and the recommendation of the administration to consider approval of the proposed 2021 tax rate and resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. President, we actually need a precise motion. on this.
Exactly. So either, Mr. Johnson, you want to read it? It's on you. Thank you, ma'am.
Even though the tax rate will stay the same, the effective tax rate increases due to the increase in property values. I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of the tax rate of 5.5189, which is effectively a 5.12% increase in the tax rate.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second? Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second the motion. Is there any other further discussion? Further discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and proceed to vote. Before we vote, I will go ahead and read again the motion that was made by Ms. Elizabeth Ramos, second by Mr. Porter Garza. Again, even though the tax rate will stay the same, the effective tax rate increases due to the increases in property values. Again, the motion before the board with the second is I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 1.5189, which is effectively a 5.12 increase in the tax rate. All those in favor say aye.
I believe this resolution is included.
I'm gonna read the resolution after we adopt it, or we gotta do it together? Because I gotta read the resolution.
Okay.
That's what I was gonna do. If it passes, Mr. Cooper, I was gonna read the resolution.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. In that, I'll go ahead and read the resolution that our CFO has directed. It will be signed by myself, Mr. Garza, along with our secretary, Mr. David R. Garcia. A resolution levying a tax rate for the Kingsville Independent School District for the tax year of 2021. Be it resolved and ordered by the Board of Trustees of the Kingsville Independent School District. We, the Board of Trustees of the Kingsville Independent School District, do hereby adopt the tax rate on $100 valuation of the district for the tax year 2018 as follows. Should be 2021.
Yes.
Go ahead and get that done. We'll get that done by our board secretary to take care of it. And again, reading at a 1.0265 for the purpose of maintenance and operation. At a 0.4924 for the purpose of interest and sinking to be the debt services, which is a total tax rate of 1.5189. This tax rate will raise more taxes for the maintenance and operations than last year's tax rate. The tax rate will be effectively raised by negative 2.54% and will raise taxes for maintenance and operations on 100,000 home by approximately negative 26.80. The tax assessor collector is hereby authorized to assess and collect the taxes of the Kingsville Independent School District employing the above tax rate. The above resolution and order was passed by the Board of Trustees and the Board of Trustees of the Kingsville Independent School District on the 24th day of August 2021, signed by your board president, Mr. Porter Garza, and be signed by Mr. Garcia. Thank you, Dr. Pitts.
Mr. Mannix, does this need a vote on the resolution or no?
No, so it was encompassed in the passing of the tax rate. This was it's actually not tax documents.
Right.
That motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to, again, as we mentioned earlier a while ago, we were going to, before we adopted the agenda, we were going to move 7E to 7D and 7D to 7E. So again, consider approval requested for a proposal of district-wide roof repairs. That can be found on page 148 of the board book. Dr. Peter Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. We, after bringing to the board the need for the roofing repairs, we brought an expert from Garland to most of our roofs are Garland roofs. He recommended that we, first of all, don't go out for an RFP because it would be under $50,000 and that we just get several quotes. He said that would be the most expeditious route to take. So we brought in, I asked 4 contractors to come in. We got 2 of them that actually 3 of them that eventually took a look at it. The problem is that the damage was more extensive than originally found out. So whenever we go over $50,000, we have to secure the purchasing method that is best for the district. So we put together this RFP so we can move the process forward. And as you can see, the timeline would go all the way through the end of September for even the RFP to be evaluated and brought to the board. And then usually it takes about another couple of weeks to get on the schedule because roofers are really busy right now, and then another couple of weeks to get the job done. Well, just Monday morning, I received a bid under $50,000, which means we don't have to go through the extended amount of time to go through the whole RFP process. I did talk to Garland, our consultant with Garland. This is a contractor that has done a lot of work for Garland roofs. It is Sunbelt. And what we are recommending is that instead of going out for an RFP, that we start immediately with that vendor, which has been added to the over $25,000 purchase. This will save us a lot of time and get our roofs together. And we, again, are very confident with this vendor according to our expert consultant from Garland. At this time, I'll take any questions.
So Dr. Pitts, what you're asking the board to consider is to do away with the RFP that we brought forward to the board and go directly with Sunbelt Roofing, is that correct?
Yes.
Where are they out of, sir?
I believe they're out of, well, I think
Give me
they're
their
out of,
nationwide cover that, just.
I think they're out of Corpus, but I can check.
You had how many people look at this?
I've had 3 people already look at it. I have had 2 quotes already, but again, I've had 3 people look at it and I've invited 4 people, including our local representative in town. But he was too busy and with work that he currently has and declined to bid on the project.
How far over 50, where I don't want the specifics, substantial, barely?
Substantial, but that vendor, we wanted to do more work than what we want. First of all, is to get everything leak proof. That's the first thing that we want to do. We'll work on getting everything up to warranty specifications later on, but the other bid was substantially higher than the 50,000 because of them wanting to put that extra work into it.
Okay, if I recall, the Garland guy, when he was here, said, take this in stages. 1, stop the water from pouring in. 2, get it to warranty specs, and then they will come back in and we would have a warranty roof that should last us for some time to come, correct?
Yes, and then number 3, just get on, like you say, the rotation to keep the warranty active. But our first priority is to stop the leaks. We have problems where when it rains, there's quite a bit of water in some areas in our campuses, and our recommendation is to move forward as quickly as possible. Since it is over 25,000, it does require board approval because they're not on by board. But since it's under 50,000, it doesn't require us to use another purchasing method to go out for bids.
All right, so the bids that did come in, were they just to stop the leaks, or were they to get it to warranty standards?
They're, according to our consultant from Garland, the other one that came in was more than what was needed to just stop the leaks.
But not enough to get it to warranty standards from them.
Oh, correct. To get everything to warranty standards, it's gonna be probably over $1 million.
And we've Garland put the roof on, and we're kind of leaning on him to be the expert as to this is what needs to be done.
Well, they didn't put the roof on. There are Garland materials. We used a contractor.
You're right. They're Garland materials, and we didn't follow through the deal.
Correct.
But they're convinced that the scope of work that has been presented in this last bid you have is going to be sufficient to stop the leaks, which was our first objective, and then we can address further on the getting to warranty standards.
Correct. The scope of work that is on page, it's on page 13 of 14, exhibit B, and then also page 14 of 14. So that scope of work, again, the contractor will be held accountable to that and to make sure that those 5 buildings are leak proof. Again, our desire is to move forward for the safety of our students. And again, we have been assured by our consultant that this is a a great contractor that has done a lot of work with Garland Materials and Roofing.
We have not had any experience with this particular.
That is correct.
Here's my question. You put was it an RFP
It's an RFP.
to the others, to everybody?
Well, I didn't put the RFP in the paper on Monday. I was going to put it until I got that bid.
Okay, but every contractor came in and saw, this is the work we want done.
Yes,
Okay, so in essence, we said, we want to buy a vanilla ice cream cone. And these guys came back and said, vanilla ice cream cone with dips, with sprinkles and nuts. And that's why the price is higher than 50,000.
well, that was for one of the contractors, and then there were two that decided not to bid on it, and then we have the fourth one.
Okay, so basically we only have 2 people that are interested.
At this time, there might be more that we could also reach out to, but
That's what you got right now. You've got
yes, right now we have two, one with
nuts and
sprinkles and one without
you've got
sprinkles.
Basic ice cream cones.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, why would a contractor give you a bid back for nuts and sprinkles?
It's public money, and they think it's not limited supply.
I mean, that's just.
I don't want to put your feet to the fire on this, but
Okay.
in your opinion, I'm not asking that Garland fully endorse this contractor that we've not had experience with, but did you get the sense that Garland was sincere and this would be adequate to get done what we believe needs to be done?
Yes, not only that, Garland will be the one that is checking to make sure that all the specs are followed as well.
He's our, make sure that everything all the guys are not a teacher.
And he doesn't have a dog in the hunt either. He's not gonna get paid more one way or the other. I guess really the only thing he has is being a representative of Garland, make sure that Garland materials are used and everything is getting toward Garland's
And part of our
specifications.
problem over the years is that we have had people effectively stop leaking the wrong way, and it's impaired our ability to get warranty.
But this is the thing, when the gentleman was here from Dr. Fitz the
Yes, sir.
other day, did he not mention that you were gonna bring these up to still have the warranty valid? I believe that's what he told us.
That's the second step. The first step is to stop the leaks, and then the second step is to do more sealing and other repairs to get it all the way up to some. A lot of these warranties can be extended for the rest of their lifetime. I believe it's 15 years, I think, is the original length of the lease. So yes, that would be step 2. Which we would love to get to, but again, I think the first step is the safety of our students, and we're trying to move as expeditiously as possible.
And then all we have to do is expand the cafeteria to the whole building. Mr. Blues.
What does students eat in the classroom?
All of them.
So you mandate we're fixing to pass. That's right.
Hey, so was there a deadline for these proposals turned into?
Tacos and
Because you mentioned earlier that one came in at the very last.
Yes, we wanted the proposals to be turned in sooner, but once we got, several were reluctant to bid on it. Once we got one proposal that was higher than the bids, we went and we put the RFP together. By the way, that was a lot of work with both the Garland rep and me to put it together. So we put it all together, and then again, working with our Garland representative, he recommended another one to come out, and we had him take a look at it and put together a bid for us. So that was kind of, he came out, I believe, last Thursday to look at all the 5 roofs, and then he just submitted the bid on Monday.
So Garland has an idea of what everybody's bidding, is that correct?
Yes.
We don't maintain the integrity process of the RFP when somebody does that.
We had,
question.
So this RFP, lets the public know that we're in search of someone to come do these repairs. So you just reached out to whomever you thought might come and give us a quote or a free estimate?
Well, we reached out to those that were local, one that was actually in Kingsville and those in the surrounding area that have done a lot of garland work and were endorsed by our consultant.
Any other questions for Dr. Pitts when it comes to, again, the recommendation that has been given to and there's two options we can take as a board. We can either go with the initial option of the RFP, if some of us feel that it's, that we want to go that route, or we can go with the Sunbelt roofing that was presented by Dr. Pitts and the garland representative. Am I correct, Dr. Pitts?
That is correct.
Fair motion?
I move that we accept Sunbelt and proceed further.
And then moved by Mr. Brian Kufal, second by Lieutenant Colonel Price. Any further discussion? Now proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Pitts. You're welcome. Go ahead and move back up to now. Stay on the podium, everybody. Consider approval of purchases over 25,000. Dr. Peter Pitts, can you find on page 146 of your board book?
Thank you. I'm going to go through several of a short explanation of several of these services, and these are either instructional or they are also for special education as well. The first one, Corpus Christi ISD, we pay to send students to Corpus Christi School for the blind and deaf, and we usually do that every year. Medicaid Claim Solutions, that is the company that helps us bill for all of the SHARs that we get money back from. We usually get about $400,000 back every year in Medicaid claims care billing. Helping Hands is a vendor that does occupational therapy services for special education students. That one we're recommending split funding, 40,000 out of the general fund, 20,000 out of the IDEA grant. Accelerate contract physical therapy students for, again, our special education students, all out of the general fund. CG Consulting, that is special education software. And then Terrasas Educational, that is, again, testing services and autism services. Again, split funding, 12,000 from the general fund, 15,000 from IDEA, altogether going over that $25,000 threshold. Mentoring Minds is an instructional program that we are proposing to purchase out of ESSER 3. And then Sharon Wells, also out of ESSER 3. Sharon Wells is a math program that we have used for several years, very popular with the teachers. I wanted to point out that there is going to be a big expense coming up that's on by board that does not need board approval, that's not here. So we have a major AC expense at PETAS where the chiller for all the classrooms in the circle is failing. It kind of has to be nursed along right now. It's going to be about $76,000. Again, that one does not need board approval, but again, we will be doing that probably within the next month or so because it has gone out several times and the coils are rusted. And again, we want to make sure that our kids at PETAS have AC. So that's going to be a major expense coming as well. That'll either be on the August or the September check register. At this time, I'll take any other questions that you might have.
Starting right there at the top, tuition, is that for the ensuing year?
Yes, for next year. All of these are for the next year. We're taking ahead of time just because we want to be prepared. We anticipate all of these to go over 25,000 during the next school year.
Is that first one a flat fee or is that a per student?
It's not a flat fee. Let Dr. Ada Bessanias talk a little bit about that.
Yes, you're fine.
All righty, yes, sir, so the regional day school will secure a seat for all the small districts at their facility in CCISD. So that is the security of that, and they also provide professional development to our team, because we do have a student that we are servicing that's visually blind, and that student goes to Austin. So that's what that expense is for.
So it's kind of a co-op. We're gonna have that expense whether we have 7 or whether, okay.
Yes, sir, we have it every year.
So it covers the student going to Austin?
It's part of the information, I mean, part of the cost of the student going to
So
Austin.
do we have to include the student that goes to Austin here?
No.
No, okay.
That's part, Dr. President, that's part of the, also that Fay Web school, right, where we send our other kids,
Yes,
which we've been doing for years.
yes.
Confused on the Sharon Wells. I know that we brought the program and they started using it last year for those grades for math. And this isn't the actual program. This is for teacher materials and professional development. But I mean, why would we do that now after we just rolled out that curriculum?
They come once a 6 weeks and they do training for that particular 6 weeks ahead of time. We used them last year, and then there was a year before we didn't use them, and then we used a couple of years previously. But we are taking what we anticipate to go over 25,000. We won't pay them all at once. We'll be paying them after each 6 weeks after they do the training and provide the materials for that 6 weeks.
So we've had this material and now we have to pay them to train us how to use the material that we've already been using. I mean, I feel like we're kind of doing it twice here. If these teachers have gotten the training for it, then there should be instructional leadership to show new teachers, transfer teachers, how to use this program. I don't know why, probably I don't know how to do so. I'm sorry for interrupting. The program requires you to purchase the training every single year. What they do is annually, they update whatever TEKS have been updated, whatever difficult to teach TEKS, they update this material annually. And so therefore they require teachers to go through the training every 6 weeks, as well as the material that we purchase varies from year to year, depending on if the TEKS change or the high frequency TEKS and that they address. Change every year, so this is great business for Sharon Wells. Yes. I hope I find out it's 7 degrees to Sharon Wells and how I get my money in there.
And again, keep in mind, a lot of these programs, as you recall, when we first came right after the spring session, a lot of our staff had the opportunity to vote on all kinds of programs. And again, I do understand where the board's coming from, but again, keep in mind, it was put up there in black and white that there were several programs that they wanted, that they felt that would be impactful to their students. And that was one of them, but I agree with some of the questions. Question I have is, Taraza education, autism, psychological testing. Is this gonna happen, is this for just for this month? Is this for the whole year? Because then I know that he's a regular on the check registry for professional services. And I know we just had one of 13,398. So what's the difference between, is this more testing that's gonna go on throughout the year or?
That is what is expected for the year.
For the year?
Yes.
Okay, I'll hold you to it.
If I may answer, so Daniel Garza is currently one of our vendors.
Yes, ma'am.
For special education, because Kingsville does not have LSSP, which is the licensed school psychologist that does an evaluation. So we're currently using 2, Daniel Garza and Dr. Alan Fisher. Alan Fisher is not this high, he's here in Corpus.
Right.
But what I've done since the short time I've been here is I've looked at the amount of money we've used for consulting services over the span of the last 4 years.
Yes, ma'am.
To really see how many students are being tested using these different consulting entities. So for this year, yes, we'll continue to use Daniel Garza. He's out of San Antonio. He comes and services us and Bishop.
Okay, like I said, we see him quite a bit, and there's no doubt that he's doing a great
Yes.
job, but I just want to. And then I guess we see Sunbelt that we just approved. So we're looking at 47,954. Is that correct, Dr. Pitts?
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for Dr. Pitts when it comes to consider approval of purchases over 25,000 presented by Dr. Pitts? If not, do I have a motion that we approve the recommendation of administration to approve purchase over 25,000 from Fund 1991, local totaling 219,954, the Idea B grant of 35,000, the ESSER 3 grant of 98,000. Your motion?
So moved.
Made by Mr. Brian Kufal. Is there a second? Lieutenant Colonel Kreitz. Any other further discussion? Not proceed to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7. Thank you, Dr. Pitts. You're welcome. All right. Go ahead and move on to item 7F. Consider approval of resolution regarding COVID-19 leave during epidemic. It can be found on page 163 of the board book. Again, Dr. Pitts, you have the pleasure.
Thank you. We had COVID leave during earlier stages of the epidemic. The Family's First Coronavirus Response Act ended at the end of December. We weren't required to provide any additional COVID leave after that. However, we did extend it through March, and then we extended again all the way through the beginning of June because of cases that we had in our community. Now with the Delta variant, we are asking that COVID leave be brought back. The way that this would work, and again, there's a resolution that needs to be read, but the way that this works would be that if, because of a COVID situation, either a positive test by the employee or a documented positive case in their household, they would not have to use their own leave until September 30th. Now, the reason for that date is because that is additional leave that is provided through the American Rescue Plan for other entities, not education, but we want to be in line with that date. In late September, we can revisit and see where we are and see if there's any other federal leave that is extended to that time, but we are recommending that starting tomorrow all the way to September the 30th, that employees do not have to use their own leave if they have a documented positive case of themselves or someone that is living in their, somebody living in their household as a dependent. And again, I'll answer any questions. The resolution would have to be read as well too.
Is that funded?
No.
Is that funded? No, Kingsville ISD would be the one that would be picking up the tab.
Recall before it was through the ESSER. Not the ESSER, it was the American.
Families First Coronavirus Response Act. We still, again, they didn't provide us any additional funding for it, but we were required to do it as a district. Everybody was required to do it until December of last year. We just chose to extend it, but again, the district is the one that picks up the tab.
So we have a year, almost a year's data on how much this was used, who used it, how many times they used it, how many days were used. We have that data, right?
I'm sure we do somewhere, yes, with human resources.
Have we looked at frequent flyers?
Yes, we have. Okay, so the difference between this COVID leave, we talked about that as a leadership team. Difference between the way that this resolution stated and what was before is, before it was if you were in close contact with someone that had tested positive. This one is a documented positive case of employee or somebody, a dependent living in your household. So we have tried to crack down on people that have misused it and only take, again, documented cases this time.
We have 95% of our employees who never used it. We probably got 5%, I don't know, I'm throwing numbers. A smaller amount, a much smaller amount who may have used it. And then we probably have a percentage that have used it a lot. You know, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, but But fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Are we in the shame on me category?
I don't believe so because we are changing the requirements to get that COVID leave. Now they have to have a positive test or someone in their household has to have a positive test.
And that's where I've got the problem. Going back to, that's why I think it's so important that we have a medical professional that will oversee something like this, because again, unfortunately, there's a lot of home tests where we're getting false positives, et cetera. Now, again, I am for trying, again, that we do need to help our employees regardless of the situation, but I think we're getting caught into a corner with the whole positive test results or somebody with a dependent. I mean, again, we don't want to play the COVID police when it comes to the testing, but that's the only thing that I'm skeptical about.
We can add language in there that it is not a CVS documented test, it is an actual doctor/lab test.
And see, that's what gets me. We've done such a great job as a district and as a board, most importantly, to give everybody an opportunity, whether you want to opt in or opt out for the insurance with telemed. Call telemed, they'll find you, they'll get you a prescription, and they'll get you to get somewhere to get a test. Take advantage of it.
We have free to employees testing at medical facilities in town. No cost to the employee.
So let me ask this question, and I maybe, no, you know what I should, because I'm gonna violate something, I'll be quiet, because from after there, I'm gonna be quiet. I'll stop. Thank you, sir.
You know, the flip side of that is if we don't allow the leave, you got infected people come to school.
True.
Because they want to work and not take their leave.
I just think that we've got a year's worth of data that tells us who frequent flyers are. Do you acknowledge that we have frequent flyers?
Yes.
Okay, we know who they are.
That's an
So
administrative.
let's not give them extra mileage.
That's a management issue that I think needs to be addressed separately from the healthcare issue.
I think we've all heard stories about, they've been gone, this is the third time they've been COVID. We've all heard it, we don't run to the superintendent with it, but we hear it. So, you know, I ignore the first time I hear it, I get a little concerned the second time, the third time I hear it, I believe it. Because usually it's true. So again.
Well, we believe with the changes we've made, and again, I would recommend that we add to the resolution, instead of COVID positive test, I would probably say a lab confirmed COVID positive test or medical certification of a lab confirmed COVID positive test for a dependent. And we believe that should help the frequent flyers.
Okay, but this is only effective up till September 30th, 2021.
Correct, tomorrow.
Then what happens?
Then we will revisit on September the 28th on that board meeting. And we will take a look at what the American Rescue Plan is doing, if they're planning to extend their leave for non-educational entities at that time. This will be effective tomorrow. So I'm sorry? With the revisions, it will be effective tomorrow with the revisions to the resolution.
Can we vote on it without it being revised?
Yeah, just yeah, I would definitely. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the resolution, and then if there is a motion, we'll entertain it. And if not, it'll just die with lack of a motion. And if there is a motion, there's nobody saying it, it dies. So let me go ahead and. You want to read it, Dr. Pitts, or you want to read it?
I'll read it, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Resolution of the board regarding COVID-19 leave during epidemics. Whereas the board is authorized by Texas Education Code Section 45.105 to expend funds of Kingsville Independent School District for purposes necessary in the conduct of the public schools as determined by the board. Whereas the board acknowledges that during an epidemic, district employees may be instructed not to report for work after on-site exposure. Whereas the board finds that a need exists to address additional leave in the circumstances of an epidemic. Whereas the board concludes that providing additional paid leave to all regular employees, contractual and non-contractual, salaried and non-salaried, who are sick or in isolation as a result of an epidemic, serves the public purposes of protecting students and staff and maintaining morale and reducing turnover. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Kingsville Independent School District authorizes providing additional paid leave for all regular employees, contractual and non-contractual, salaried and non-salaried, who are sick as a result of an epidemic. Employee must provide, I'll leave this to the discretion of the board, but I'll put in here just in case, a lab confirmed COVID positive test result for themselves or medical certification of a lab confirmed COVID positive test result for a dependent in their household as described under IRS rules and guidelines. The authority granted by this resolution allows paid leave beginning August 25th, 2021 until September 30th, 2021 as described in the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. This extended leave is temporary to address the current emergency situation, expires September 30th, 2021, adopted this 24th day of August 2021 by the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Dr. Pitts. You're welcome. Is there any more discussion when it comes to that? No, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the resolution as read by Dr. Pitts.
Made by Mr. Kufal again to accept the resolution read by Dr. Pitts. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. David Garcia. Any further discussion? Not proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the resolution that has been read for the COVID-19 that was read by Dr. Peter Pitts, say aye. Aye. Suppose say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Pitts. You're welcome. Item 7G, consider approval of memorandum of understanding between Kingsville Independent School District and the Education Service Center Region 2. This can be found on page 165 of your board book. Dr. Pitts, what you guys, you're there all day, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have several entities that we're partnering with this year, and this opportunity with Region 2 is to provide GED services for students that are in our community. They would be using one of the rooms that is in the Clayburg Annex. It's those 4 rooms that are directly in a row behind the Caliche parking lot at the front of the building. This would be the 3rd building, 3rd room in that building. They would pay the utilities at their request, just like we did with the Head Start, the K-Cost Head Start. For their budget purposes, they asked that we estimate what the utilities would be so that they would have a flat rate every month. And so for that, 1 classroom for everything for internet, water, utilities, and electricity, again, we estimated $100 for that particular room. And at this time, I will entertain any questions that you have.
Is there any questions for Dr. Pitts? If not, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on the recommendation that was made by administration to approve the memorandum of understanding between Kingsville Independent School District and the Education Service 7, Region number 2. So moved by Mr. James Bluesing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There, Mr. Thomas Salinas, any further discussion? Not proceed to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, Dr. Pitts, 7H, consider approval of memorandum of understanding between Kingsville ISD and Boys and Girls Club of Kingsville. This can be found on page 172 on your board book. Dr. Peter Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. The Boys and Girls Club had a previous MOU to use our gymnasium at Memorial for the summer. They paid for the utilities of that building. They are requesting using the gymnasium and then the cafeteria and fine arts wing and adjoining hallways for this school year. They again would pay the utilities. We did not have any issues with them when they used the facility during the summer. At this time, I'll entertain any questions you have.
And again, the reason why is Dr. Pitts is correct. This summer, they just used the gymnasium because of their summer sports. And now the school has begun, they're expanding, and this is where the fall sports began, along with a lot of their tutorials are going to begin. So that's why they're asking for the additional, but again, keep in mind, nothing has really changed when it comes to the memorandum of understanding. But again, that was the reason why they're asking him for the upcoming year. But again, it's for those couple of that wing because of the tutorials they're going to be providing for the kiddos in that area.
That is correct, and these are mostly our students, Mr. Garza, as well too. So they're getting tutoring for their coursework, and then of course any evening sports activities as well.
You heard the recommendation by administration. Is there a motion?
Mr. Garza, I got a question.
Absolutely.
Are they gonna be held to also wearing masks? You know? Because these are our kids and they are in a KISD building.
That has not been determined. That's something that we can.
That is a great question.
Yes.
Mr. Garcia. And what I can tell you is we can definitely discuss in the back, but I can tell you that anybody that enters a KISD building is required. But again, we can definitely put a great question we're talking about. Am I correct, Mr. Max? And that's for any entity that comes into this.
Yes, great question, Mr. Garcia. The mandate that was passed last Friday said KISD facility, I believe. Again, I'll defer to what is decided in the back there and make sure that is communicated to Boys and Girls Club Kingsville.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
I have a question. What is Boys and Girls Club get billed for there instead of estimated like the other one?
They have not quite determined how much they're going to use the facility. And then at the same time, the time that they're not using that facility, it may be used by another entity, and we don't want to bill them for the time that another entity uses the utilities. The rooms, for instance, at Head Start and at the service center, those are designated rooms that we know how much they're going to use them for, and nobody else is going to use that area. So it's much easier to pinpoint and get an estimate on how much the utilities are going to be. Not at this time, nobody is, but we have had during the time that Boys and Girls Club was there, we did have another entity use the gymnasium.
Do they pay for their electric?
Correct. Yes,
That's nice of them. They're gonna do the same thing here.
that's the plan. Yes, we don't want to be tied to only Boys and Girls Club using it just because they're not going to be using it all the time during the day, every single day.
Any other question? Is there again a motion to, again, on the recommendation by administration to approve memorandum of understanding between Kingsville ISD and the Boys and Girls Club of Kingsville? A motion?
So moved.
Made by Mr. Brian Kufal. Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second that motion. Any further discussion? Now proceed to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Dr. Pitts.
You're welcome.
Two more, bud. Stay right there. Consider approve of integrated pest management policy that can be found on page 178. Dr. Pitts.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. We are required as a district to have an integrated pest management policy, which you see the full policy there. This is for the safety of staff and students. Part of that in there is that that staff cannot bring their own pesticides and spray it inside the buildings. Again, this is for the safety of, again, all that are in our buildings. We are requesting that the policy be approved as stated, and again, it will require the signature of the board president and our superintendent. I don't believe, Mr. Maddox, that this policy statement needs to be read.
No, sir.
Okay, again, you heard the recommendation by administration, again, to adopt the approval of the integrated pest management policy that is done pretty much every year, correct, Dr. Pitts?
Yes.
Is there a motion? Made by Mr. David Garcia. Is there a second?
Kill the bug, I'll second.
Bruce beat you to the punch. Correct? All, any further discussion? Now proceed to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. All right, Dr. Pitts, last one for you, bud.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. 7J, consider approval of 2021-2022 student code of conduct. This can be found on page 204. Dr. Peter Pitts.
I will be presenting this on behalf of Dr. Johnny Sandoval, who wasn't able to make it tonight. So what you see in front of you is a TASB model. They gave us a template, and when they give you a template, they also give you two different decision points. One is where you put in information that is pertinent to the district, district positions, different personnel, and anything with a district policy. And then the other decision points that are put in there are based on, TASB gives you 2 or 3 different languages depending on what your district is choosing to put in the policy. But everything in here is based on the TASB model. I'll entertain any questions that you have.
That's our legal counsel had an opportunity to look over the school district authority and jurisdiction.
Yes, sir, I have. I know we spoke about this earlier, and so I read that section on it. There is some areas where it is a little vague, but I believe that's done deliberately, because sometimes you can't lock yourself into a corner. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on it.
Well, my question is, in the line number 2, it says independent of classes of school-sponsored activities. And I have a problem with the fact that we're only have students under our control between school hours or during school hours of the day, so that we don't have the opportunity at night. So it says independent of classes and school-sponsored activities. This could be at any time that any parent says anything to their child, and we can hold the child responsible.
Is this page 211?
This is 211.
Item 2?
Line 2. It's at the very end of the line. It says
Pretty much periods are
independent of classes.
I have, well, the student is intense at any school-related activity. So a school-related activity, is that the one you're talking about, regardless of time or location?
I'm looking at the line, yes, I'm looking at the line above it where it says with or independent of classes and school-sponsored activities.
The first paragraph.
I don't have that. Let's see where you're at.
It's up at-
In conjunction. Is that what
Oh,
you're-
on the verb, it's on. Okay.
Yes, line 2.
School rules and sort of distribution. Okay, so this is a generalized statement. So we have policy and we have case law in terms of when a school district is responsible or not responsible. The following list, 1 through 11, those are areas that have typically been addressed directly by statute. There's also some things that fall under constitutional rights and some things that fall under, for example, Title IX, that are just sort of case law precedent. I believe that's probably trying to capture that. If the board feels that's unclear or needs revision, we can look at that. But I believe that was the intent of that language.
I'm the son of a lawyer and a banker, and if it wasn't written down properly, it didn't occur. I would very much like to have that clarified.
Okay. What the options before the board is, you can adopt or reject this as written. You can also entertain a motion with a specific tweak or alteration, or you can refer to, or you can adopt pending legal counsel review and revision if you'd like as well.
I would say pending council review.
And that'd be your motion choosing?
That's my motion. I move that we put this council review.
Is there a second?
Is this going back to an executive or is this just coming back at another meeting? 'Cause I got questions.
So if it's approved pending legal counsel review, I can certainly engage in a legal discussion with you guys in executive tonight.
Okay.
And it'll be pre-approved, so that way that discussion can hit the ground running. That helps. If you have any specific questions right now, I'm happy to field it. If I feel it has to go to the back, I can advise that.
No, I just thought when
He was reading that, and just during lunch periods in which a student is allowed to leave the campus, are we allowing all campus luncheon?
They're not allowed.
They're not allowed.
Okay. Well, there's kids leaving for lunch. So,
I know that we do have students that are in a work program.
Yeah, they come back with their water burgers and all that, or mess, but I thought, I didn't know that we had that free lunch thing. So number 2 shouldn't even apply to us, really.
This was taken, again, TASB language,
That should go out.
So there's a fight right there in the parking lot on this, on a public sidewalk in front of H&M King, you know what I'm talking about, the strip mall. We can hold them accountable and it be on their permanent record if they got the whatever illegal fight or whatever they did. Right there, that'd be your 300 feet.
300 feet. But I think keep in mind that, and again, there's a motion in front of the board right now that is to have legal counsel review the student code of conduct before any action is taken. Am I correct, Mr. Lucy?
I believe it was to revise it.
No, he wants to look at make sure everything.
I want clarification on the, authority and jurisdiction.
Okay, well, board, I advise we do this. Why don't we move this until after executive? And that way we can go into legal consultation. I'll take this document with us. We can get some feedback from the board that way.
We need to table it, any motion to table?
We can just, if there's no objection from any board member, we can just visit this after executive and go right to executive item.
Board member have any objection? Anybody? Once, twice? Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Dr. Fitz. You're welcome. Okay. Item number 8, the board will enter into closed session in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551.071 and 551.074 to deliberate and consider the following. Consider employment of athletic trainer, and the item 8A. Item 8B, consider resignation of contracted employees. And 8C, discussion with legal counsel regarding legal and personnel matters. No action will be taken until we return to open session. We are now in a closed session at approximately 7:24. Again, I thank administrators, staff for being here. Have a good night, be safe, and have a great day tomorrow.
And we are
Oh, yeah. I'll send that one. Thank you.
Very much.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. We now return to open session and take necessary action in matters which the board may discuss in open session and upon which action may be taken. We are now returning to open session at approximately 8:23 p.m. It's time to be up to item 8A, consider approval of employment of athletic trainer. Administration is recommending that the Board of Trustees approve the contract employee presented in the executive session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. James Bluesing, second by Mr. David Garcia. Is there any further discussion? We'll now proceed to vote. All those in favor of taking the recommendation that was given by administration to accept Mr. Adrian Hernandez as the new athletic trainer for HM King High, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Motion.
Oh, sorry, I voted twice.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Duval. Item carries 7-0. It's been a long day, sir. I got you.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's item 8A. Item 8B, consider approval of resignation of contracted employee.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir, Mr. Kupo.
I move that the board not approve the resignation of the Director for Secondary Instruction, and that the board take the action, the remedial action discussed in closed session. Is that sufficient?
Yes, sir.
You heard the motion made by Mr. Brian Kupo. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lieutenant Colonel Kreitz. Any discussion? Now proceed to vote. All those in favor of, again, taking the motion again, that the Board of Trustees not approve the resignation and take possible action to discuss in executive session, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, go ahead and then move back to a topic we brought up, again, was brought back to the board in executive session. Again, item 7J, again, consider approval of 2021-2022 Student Code of Conduct, and that can be found on page 204. Again, was presented by Dr. Pitts. I think we had a great lengthy discussion. We had clarification again from our legal counsel. Board, I thank you so much for the questions you had, but again, legal, thank you for clarifying. Is there a motion that we accept?
I move that we accept the student code of conduct as explained.
And the motion again was made by Mr. James Bluesing to accept the 2021 student code of conduct that was explained by legal. Is there a second? And second by Ms. Delma Salinas. Is there any further discussion? Not proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries 7-0. There being no further business to come before this meeting, I now declare this meeting adjourned at approximately 8:26 p.m.